Welcome one and all to a brand new video. Today we're gonna read some stories from r/pettyrevenge, where people tell the tales of their, spoiler alert, petty revenge. Our first Reddit post is from Jade Wildaz. About 6 months ago, I had a layover in Houston. After deplaning and going through security, I realized my headphones had fallen out of my pocket. I submitted the lost item claim with United and gave the description of the color of the silicone case they had with them, plane info, seat number, the whole thing. I also set it to lost mode and included my phone number to call me. I emailed United a few times stating I could see that they had moved from the plane to what seemed to be a United office space. I now realize it was probably employee lockers. After about 24 hours, I saw them go into an apartment building. I watched them go from the apartment building to the airport, back and forth, and track the schedule. I gave United the address of the employee, their schedule, and what days they had worked. Surely the home address and schedule was enough to pinpoint who it was, so they could at least deal with it internally. Wasn't exactly excited to get the AirPods back if they'd been wearing them. United told me that because the AirPods had left the property, they wouldn't do anything and I had to file a police report with Houston PD. I live in Arizona. They closed my claim. I use the Find My app a lot for various AirTags and things. So for the last few months, whenever I see my lost headphones with the earbuds out, I hit play sound on the earbud and blast the wearer's ears out. I see them quickly go back into the case. If they would have called me when they found them, I happily would have sent them a reward, even enough to buy their own basic pair. I understand they're expensive and not everyone can swing a pair. I'm slowly working toward making them go deaf, so no one else loses a set of headphones to them. I think this is the pettiest thing I've ever done. Oh my gosh, OP. I can admit, the first time I got AirPods, I was playing around with them until I too found that play sound button. And I pressed it with the pod still in my ears. Let me tell you now that it was a truly unforgettable experience. Touching a hot stove type lesson. With that said, I think it's safe to say that the thief likely has hearing damage. Our next Reddit post is from the Rich Auntie 11. I thought about this last night and chuckled to myself. I used to work 12 hours, 4 days a week and 4 days off. It was a great schedule to work when I was young and energetic. I worked with someone who was like my sister and we had a great time. 2 nights a week, we worked with the most miserable boomer in the world. She once told me that she tricked a Muslim by not telling him there was pork on a pizza. I said to her, so that's actually incredibly evil. In the dead of Canadian winter, I understood, and my friend understood. We were gonna get tired. If it was quiet, one of us would shut our eyes, and the other would watch the phones. We never had an issue. However, we never did it when that miserable woman was around. One night, I got so tired I fell asleep for about 20 minutes. Woke up to the phone lines ringing. I wake up and that miserable woman is watching me. I just looked at her and answered the phone. We come back in that night and one of our supervisors starts telling us how that woman went to the general manager and told her that I'd fallen asleep. The general manager said, "That happens. Their shift runs smoothly. I don't care what they do as long as their work is done." I just laugh. That night, the miserable woman comes in and it was a cold freaking night. I notice around 2 a.m. she started dozing off and snoring. I take out my cell phone and start dialing from a private number and she jolted awake. She kept dozing off and I kept doing it all night. Whether or not she knew it was me, she just knew she embarrassed herself by being a 55-year-old tattletale. She never did rat on me or my friend ever again. That is truly petty revenge. But next time, you should start hiding alarm clocks around the office with them set to go off at completely random intervals. If the customers start wondering what the noises are, just tell them it's needed for absolute pettiness. Our next Reddit post is from Pleasant Bad. Not a complicated story. My old roommate used to eat my food and drinks. Despite having several conversations about boundaries and not being a jerk, nothing changed. So I faked being sick for 2 days over the weekend when he was home. I drank directly out of the orange juice container. I licked the edge of the pickle jar before putting the top back on when some pickle juice ran over. I stuck my bare finger in the peanut butter, and I used my finger to put cream cheese on a bagel. I made sure he noticed all of it. On Sunday, he broke and asked me if I always handled food like that. I told him I thought it was dumb to dirty utensils when I'm the only one eating my food. Not only did that end my food being stolen, but he suggested we have our own drawers and shelves in the fridge to prevent confusion, lol. Oh, that's actually genius. And adding on the fake sickness was just chef's kiss. I'm lucky enough to not have encountered a food thief in a long time, but when that day comes, and I know it will, I'll have this post in my arsenal. Our next Reddit post is from Insomniac Reads. I was fresh out of a relationship and was really hurt, so I went to dating apps looking for a hookup to get my mind off things. Not healthy and do not recommend. I matched with this one guy and we hit it off instantly. I was honest with him about my situation and he was really understanding. He said all the right things. How he was going to be a good bounce back from my last relationship, and how he even wants to be something more than a hookup since we got along really well. We were talking every day for about a week, and at the week's end, we hooked up. The day after, everything was still going normal, but after that, he stopped responding to my messages and would just leave me on read. I would see when he comes online too, so it made me feel disrespected. I sent him one message saying if he was ghosting me, he should just unmatch. The next time I came to the app, he wasn't there anymore. I was so sad after this. It reopened so many wounds and had the adverse effect that made me think about my ex more and how I would never find a guy like my ex. Anyways, about 3 weeks later, I see a certain like from the same dude but on a different app. I actually saw him on another dating site as well a week after, and I sent him a like because I was desperate and confused. But he didn't send one back even though he viewed my profile. At this time, I was healed up a little and no longer as desperate, so I wanted to play with him a little and liked him back. He immediately messaged me back saying he was really sorry, blah blah blah. I know he was feeling frisky again and thought I was easy. Anyways, we start talking again, more deeply than before. I told him he would have to win my trust back. He agreed. After about a week, he would always turn the conversation spicy, so I knew he was full of it and would ghost me again if we spent another night together. I decided to give in and tell him to come over on Saturday. This was during an extremely heavy snow day and it was really cold outside. I told him to come to my apartment building at 1 a.m. because I don't want my roommates to be awake. The day and time comes and he texts me that he's here. After about 5 minutes, he texts again. After another 5 minutes, he texts again. I keep on leaving him on read since the app lets you know when someone has read your message. He tries calling on the app, but I ignore him. I see him typing and I immediately unmatch. After about 30 minutes, I look through my window and see him practically running away since it was so cold outside. I made him come at 1 a.m. because I knew no one would be coming into the apartment at that time to let him in. He probably doesn't care and was using me anyways, but I'm happy I stood up for myself, even just a little bit. It's not too often that you get the chance to ghost the person who previously ghosted you. I would have done the same thing if I had the chance, but under different circumstances than OP here. Our next Reddit post is from a gate bagger. Many years ago, we bought a house on a street filled with original owners. The houses were built in the 50s, so all the neighbors were seniors. Since we were young, we took care of many neighbor problems like garbage cans, light repairs, and keeping the street gutters clear during storms. Our street was also prime territory for predatory door-to-door salesmen. The no soliciting signs didn't deter them and I was getting angry at all of them. I don't mind popping off when someone deserves it. Those fools paid a high price for their inability to read. One pair of obnoxious men didn't care for my tirade, got offended, and went next door to try their luck. Big mistake. That was my favorite neighbor. My window was open and I heard her say no twice, but they wouldn't stop. I yelled out the window that she said no and they needed to go. The offended one argued with me, told me to mind my own business. Bigger mistake. I came out of my house, gave them both a vitriolic lecture about consent and pointed to the sidewalk. Grudgingly, they turned and headed for the next house. When they got to the sidewalk, I pointed to every single house and said they were all under my protection. I told them I would follow them to each house and monitor their interactions. If they didn't leave after the first no, my lecture would start again. Oh, I meant it and followed them to the end of the street. I ruined their day and all these years later, it still makes me smile. Yiblets down in the comments says, I have a brass plaque near my doorbell that states, beware of occupant. And then there are more people replying, I have a sign that says, if you can read this, you're probably trespassing. Works well. My parents had a stone decoration that read, never mind the dog, beware of the owner.
Beware of Doug.
Our next Reddit post is from Premium Oxygen. Many moons ago, when I lived at my family home, my younger brother was addicted to playing Call of Duty and was one of those teenagers that would take it way too seriously. My bedroom was downstairs and his above mine, and when he'd lose or get killed in a way he decided was unfair, he'd shout down his headset and slam his feet onto the ground, which shook my whole bedroom. This would go on until the early hours of the morning, despite me asking him time and time again to please keep it down. It got to the point where I was exhausted all the time after being constantly woken up. I even recall this happening until 3 a.m. the morning of a job interview, which I subsequently failed as I couldn't even think straight. He was a bit of a psychopath in those days, so he wouldn't care that he was keeping me up. If I did anything by force, like switch his PlayStation off or whatever, then he'd likely retaliate far more severely. So I needed to find a way to make it seem like it wasn't me. It would be too obvious if I turned the entire router off and on, since it takes time to re-establish itself. I opted to log into our router settings via my phone, change the password to something else, then change it back again. This would automatically boot off everything on the network for just a moment and then reconnect. It was perfect. If he got too loud, then I could just boot him off the game and it would look like an outage or a server issue in-game. Then I'd let him start another game and would repeat the process until he eventually got fed up of it and turned it off. I think it also created a Pavlov's dog response in him not to get angry at it or it would mysteriously disconnect. He never caught on to it being me, though he did comment on how much better the Wi-Fi had been after I moved out. Guess it must be because it's using less bandwidth, I lied. Too long, didn't read. I changed the Wi-Fi password to boot his PlayStation off the network before putting it back because he's shouting at his game until the early hours of the morning. Our next Reddit post is from Mary Misandrist. I was telling this story the other night and was told to post it here. This takes place 19 years ago when I worked for State Street Bank for one of the worst human beings ever, Paula. I had just started working for Paula. The team was a mini project team tackling complex financial operation problems with high senior vice president visibility. That's how it was sold to me. In reality, it was a mushroom farm with Paula keeping you in the dark and feeding you garbage. All I did was compile reports and gather data from people who were terrified of my team. Needless to say, I was bait and switched and was looking to get out shortly after I got there. She had a habit of always criticizing your work with the stupidest things. One of the reports I was responsible for was a weekly update on certain oil warrants out of Nigeria. To those that don't know, a warrant is an agreement to buy a commodity at a specific price, regardless of the current value. The reason being, there was an option to buy at $30 per barrel when prices peaked at $90 per barrel. We had no idea if the holder knew about this or not, but we had to monitor and report it because the liability and loss would have been massive. Anywho, week after week after week after week, Paula would review and rip me a new butthole over the format, verbiage, and every stupid thing not related to the actual numbers being right. Total ticky-tack stuff. One day, I was going through the network files and stumbled across an old folder for a similar project. It was Paula's handiwork before they gave her a team to manage. So I decided to use her format for everything, even changing the report structure to look just like hers and using her cover letter language. I brought it to her office to review and sign off, and she absolutely lost her mind. She asked what happened to the old format. I told her since she didn't seem to like what I've been doing, I thought it best to change it around. She said that this was worse than before, probably the worst I've submitted to her. She went on for what seemed like forever. I just looked at her and didn't interrupt her with a blank face. Her last question to me was, what was I thinking when I made these changes? I told her I used the formatting and language she used when she was doing a similar report a few years back. That I found the folder online and used her past work verbatim, just with the numbers and relevant information changed. I gave her the printouts of her reports and letters to compare. She just looked at me and had this dumbstruck look on her face. I asked if this was bad, should I go back to my format then? She just signed off on the reports and said to send them as is. I just wanted to confirm that they were fine to send because less than a minute ago, she said it was basically unreadable. She said that they were fine and we didn't have to redo them. So, I sent them out. I was smart enough to find and save all of her old work. For example, to use. I noticed that she went through and deleted/moved the older folders that I encountered, because I expected her to. This cat and mouse game went on for the remainder of my time there. I would use her template/past work and wait for her to tear it apart. After a few more times, she eventually figured out that I grabbed all of them. She asked, and I told her I created standard operation procedures using all of her past work and had it saved locally. It seemed like a logical thing to do. I was able to quit a few months later. F you, Paula. Alright everyone, that was r/pettyrevenge. Tell me what you think about the stories in the comments and if I should read more. Or maybe even suggest some other subreddits. Feedback on the video would also be appreciated. Let me know if you'd like to see more of this style of content. And it looks like that's time. Thank you all for stopping by, but that's all I have for show today. Until next time, stay tuned. If you enjoyed this video, how about we strike a deal? You like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll create more videos. Pretty sweet deal, right? Please shake my hand.